Hungarian folk tales. A talking vine, a smiling apple, and a jingling, tingling peach. Once upon a time there lived a king who had 3 beautiful daughters. He was leaving for market one day when he asked his daughters, "Tell me, what would you like me to bring you from the market?" The eldest replied, "Dear father, bring me a golden dress." The second daughter replied, "Bring me a silver dress." "And what shall I bring for you?" the king asked his youngest daughter. "Dear father, bring me a talking vine, a smiling apple, and a jingling, tingling peach." The king shook his head. "If such things are to be found in this world, I will bring them to you, daughter dear." The king went to the market, where he quickly found and purchased a golden dress for his eldest daughter, a silver dress for his middle daughter, but he simply could not find a talking vine, a smiling apple, or a jingling, tingling peach. The king was downcast. It saddened him that he was unable to fulfill his most beloved daughter's wish. While he was brooding, his coach gave a sudden jolt and got stuck so deep in the mud that the horses could not pull it free. The king was furious because his trusty horses could race more quickly than the stars across the night sky. He sent to the village for help, and when news spread that the king's coach was stuck in the mud, men, women, and even small children came to lend a hand. To their shame, no one could push the king's coach free. All of a sudden, a pig appeared. "Oink, Grant, oink, your highness, give me your youngest daughter's hand and I will free you, your horses, your coach, and everything." The king stood and stared in amazement, but whatever the king thought, he simply replied, "We will shake on it, a king's hand and a pig's trotter. If you free me, I will give you my youngest daughter's hand." The pig didn't wait, didn't hesitate. He wedged his snout under the wheels, gave a shove, and pushed the coach from the mud. The horses took off at a gallop, and the king was back in his castle in a flash. And when he got home, he gave his eldest daughter the golden dress and his middle daughter the silver dress. But with great sadness, he said to his youngest daughter, "My dear girl, my darling daughter, why didn't you ask for a dress too? For I failed to find a vine, a smiling apple, and a jingling, tingling peach." But hardly had he finished when he heard a gruff grunting outside. He looked out of the window and saw that the pig had even brought his wheelbarrow. "Oink, Grant, oink, I've come for your daughter. Let her come down and I'll carry her off in my wheelbarrow." "Stop there," thought the king. "I'll send you a maiden." A peasant girl was quickly found, robed in the beautiful golden dress, and sent out to meet the pig. But the pig was no fool. He said to the king, "Oink, Grant, oink, this is not your daughter." The king began to regret that he had ever given his word to a filthy swine. And the princess? She sobbed and moaned so terribly that the whole palace shook. The king, shedding bitter tears of grief, told her, "My dear daughter, I have promised you to the pig, so you must go." Then the king had an idea. He dressed his youngest daughter in dirty rags and sent her out to meet the pig. The pig, when he saw the princess, was beside himself with joy. He grabbed the girl, placed her in the wheelbarrow, and carried her off, grunting and oinking all the way. "Oink, Grant, oink. Don't cry, princess. You'll be happy with me. We'll soon be home." But the daughter only really began to sob when the pig came to a stop in front of a large sty, took her inside and sat her down on dirty straw. "Oink, Grant, oink, this is my home," said the pig, and he offered her some corn. "Oink, Grant, oink, have a bite to eat, princess." But the princess simply sobbed and moaned. She cried and cried until she eventually fell into a deep, deep slumber. The princess slept and slept, and she didn't wake until noon the next day. As the noon bell rang, she opened her eyes and, wonder of wonders, she was dazzled by a blinding light. She had lain down in a pigsty, and now, lo and behold, she awoke in a palace. A host of maids hurried to her bedside. They brought her sumptuous robes and dressed her beautifully. Then they took her into the neighbouring room, where a handsome youth sat at a table laden with food. He said to her, "Take a seat. Everything you see is yours. I too am yours, if you will have me." "Who are you? What are you?" the girl asked. "I will tell you in good time. Come now to the garden." He took her arm, and they went into the garden. In the garden, a fine vine leaned towards the maid, and the clusters of grapes spoke, "Pick us from the vine, princess." They walked on, and soon she espied an apple tree, the little red apples on its boughs smiling beautifully. "And as you see, we have smiling apples too," said the youth. They walked a little more. "What is jingling and tingling so sweetly?" the princess asked. "Jingling, tingling peaches, as you wished. Now will you stay and be my wife?" The princess wrapped the youth in her arms. "Yes, I will stay and be your loving wife for the rest of my life." But the youth then told her how he had once been a king, but a cruel witch had changed him into a lowly swine and put a curse on him. He would remain a pig until he found a maid who had wished for a talking vine, a smiling apple, and a jingling, tingling peach. They sent word out that very day, inviting every member of his kingdom to the wedding. Their fabulous feast was indeed a wondrous sight to see, and they both lived happily ever after. Hungarian folk tales. King Matthias and the Lamb with the Golden Fleece. The King of Prussia went to see King Matthias. They greeted each other as old friends, and the King of Prussia said, "I heard that you have a lamb with a golden fleece." "It is true. Among the many sheep in my flocks, I have a lamb with a golden fleece, and I have a shepherd who never tells a lie." To this the King of Prussia replied, "I will prove to you that you are wrong, for your shepherd does not always speak the truth." "This I will not believe," said King Matthias, "for my shepherd never lies." "I will prove to you that he does, for I will trick him, so that he must." To this King Matthias replied, "I am so certain of his honesty that I will give you half my kingdom if he lies." The King of Prussia replied, "And I will give you half of mine if he does not." So they shook hands and bid each other good night, and the King of Prussia returned to his inn. There he changed his clothes into peasant's rags and went to work in the fields. Meekly he greeted the shepherd, and the shepherd replied, "Welcome, the Lord's blessing be on you, my king." "How do you know I am a king?" The shepherd replied, "I know from your words you are a king." To this the King of Prussia replied, "I will shower you in golden coins. I will give you 6 horses and the finest carriage if you give me the lamb with the golden fleece." "Oh, I could not do that, not for all the gold in the world, for King Matthias would have me hanged." The King of Prussia promised him riches and jewels, but the shepherd did not give in. The King of Prussia returned to his inn, hanging his head in sorrow. His daughter saw this and said, "Do not be sad, father. I will go myself, and I will take a coffer of gold coins and trick him myself." So the king's daughter took a coffer full of gold and a bottle of sweet wine with which to trick the shepherd. But the shepherd only answered that he had no need of money, and King Matthias would surely hang him if he lost the lamb with the golden fleece. But the girl persisted, and soon they had drunk the wine, though she had had to have the first sip to prove to him that she had not poisoned the wine. The shepherd was soon in such high spirits that he said he would give her the lamb with the golden fleece if she would spend the night with him. But he had no need of riches or gold, for he had riches enough. The girl did not hesitate, and she agreed to lie down with the shepherd. Then she said to him, "Skin the lamb and eat its meat, for I have no need of it. I need only its fleece." Brimming with joy, the girl took the fleece back to her home. Her father was overjoyed that his daughter had managed to trick the shepherd. But morning came, and the shepherd was very sad, for he did not know what to say to his king. And as he walked, he stuck his crook in a hole in the ground, hung his hat on its end, stepped back, and greeted it as if it were the king. The king, or rather the shepherd's hat, asked, "What news do you bring me from the fields?" To this the shepherd replied, "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece is gone, for it was eaten by a wolf." And the shepherd shook with fear. "You lie, for the wolf would have eaten the rest of the flock as well." The shepherd took his crook under his arm and set off again towards the castle. He ambled and rambled along, and he soon came across another hole in the ground, where he stuck his crook in the hole and hung his hat on the end and greeted the figure of the king. "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece stumbled into the well and drowned." "You lie," said the king, "for the others would have drowned too." So the shepherd carried on until he found a third hole in the ground, where he stuck his crook in the hole and hung his hat on the other end, and for the third time he greeted the figure of the king. "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that the lamb with the golden fleece has been stolen." "You lie," said the king, "for the others would have been stolen too." So for the third time he took his crook from the ground and continued on his way to the castle of King Matthias. In the castle the king was seated at the table together with the King of Prussia and his daughter. The shepherd humbly approached and greeted the two kings and the girl. But the King of Prussia had already given King Matthias the fleece of the golden lamb, and now all three were waiting to see if the shepherd would lie or tell the truth. For if he lied, King Matthias would lose half his kingdom. King Matthias asked, "What news do you bring me from the fields?" "No news at all, except that I exchanged the lamb with the golden fleece for a beautiful black sheep." King Matthias was overjoyed, but he replied, "Bring this black sheep to me." But the shepherd answered, "She is sitting right there between the two kings." "Well done," said King Matthias, "for you have told no lies, and today I give you half of the lands belonging to the King of Prussia. And I shall give you my daughter's hand in marriage. said the King of Prussia, "for you already know the taste of each other's lips." And this is how King Matthias Shepherd rose to become the King of Prussia. Hungarian folk tales. Butcher Boy George. Once upon a time, in a land far, far beyond the hills, there lived a youth named Butcher Boy George. You could travel the length and breadth of the land, visit 7 villages, and never find his match. So strong was the boy that he needed no meat cleaver. He could kill a bull with his bare hands. One day, Butcher Boy George decided to bid farewell. So he said goodbye to his father and his mother, and he set out to see the world. He rambled and ambled across the lands, and on the 7th day of his journey, he arrived at the edge of a huge, dark forest. He looked to the left, he looked to the right, to see if perhaps he could espy the glow of a campfire, and indeed, he suddenly saw the shimmer of flames flickering between the trees. He set out towards the fire, but then thought better of it, for he feared that perhaps the fire had been lit by bandits. But hardly had he taken a step, and again the glow of the flames flickered in front of him. Again he turned to the left, he turned to the right, but no matter which way he turned, the shimmer of the campfire always followed his gaze. "Oh," said Butcher Boy George, "come what may, I will not turn away any more like a sheep trying to flee the wolves." And he went straight in the direction of the fire. When he reached the fire, he saw an old woman poking at its coals, trying to kindle their glow. He greeted her. "Good evening, good woman." "Good evening to you, my boy. What brings you to this distant forest?" "I'm searching for lodging, good woman. If only I could find a place to rest my head." "I could give you a place to rest your head, but I must warn you that every night demons come to my house at the first stroke of midnight, and they bring grief to anyone they find." "I do not fear, good woman. I only want a warm bed for the night. The rest is my concern." The old woman mumbled something to herself, blinked with her falcon-like eyes, led the boy to his room, made his bed, and left him there. The boy went to bed, and he soon fell asleep. But he did not sleep long, for at the first stroke of midnight, the demons began knocking at the doors and windows, making such a clatter that the whole house began to shake. Even Butcher Boy John felt frightened by this. Leaping from his bed, he took his stick in his hand and waited to see what would happen. Suddenly, the door gave a mighty creak, a tremendous chest flew into the room, a long walking stick popped out of the chest, wearing a red cap on its end, and lunged at Butcher Boy George. But Butcher Boy George knew a thing or two about demons. He knocked the red hat from the end of the walking stick, the hat rolled under the bed, and as all the demon's strength was held in this hat, the walking stick too quickly took refuge under the bed. So Butcher Boy George leapt out the door, turned to make the sign of the cross on it so that the demon would be trapped, and withdrew to hide out on the porch. Meanwhile, Day was beginning to break outside. Cockerels had begun to crow, and the demons returned to their realm. As soon as the demons had departed, Butcher Boy George went into the old woman's kitchen. You cannot imagine the spectacle that awaited him there. The fire was blazing high, and its flames licked at the bottom of a soot-black cauldron of boiling tar. In front of the fireplace, a beautiful young maiden sat stirring the tar and sobbing to herself. "Why are you crying, gentle maiden?" "Oh, my poor soul," the maiden replied. "Alas, I have good reason to sob. I stir this boiling tar for my own weak body." "And who told you to do this?" asked Butcher Boy George. "The old woman who took you in. She hired me as a cleaning girl, but she did not need a cleaning girl. In truth, she seeks to make a witch of me. But since I refuse to become a witch, she will burn my body to ashes and dust in this boiling tar." "Fie!" cried Butcher Boy George. "I will put a stop to this. Do not fear, gentle maiden. Just keep stirring the tar and blowing the coals that they glow red hot beneath the cauldron, for the tar will be the witch's bathwater, not yours." Then suddenly the old witch arrived, and she asked the girl, "Has the tar come to the boil?" "It has, old woman, it has." "And you? Do you want to be a witch?" "I do not," answered the maiden. "I ask you for a second time. Do you want to be a witch?" "I do not." "I ask you for a third and last time. Do you want to be a witch?" "And I answer for the third time. I do not." "Oh, you wretched maiden, into the cauldron with you!" But Butcher Boy George had heard quite enough. He leapt out from behind the door, took the witch in his hands, spun her in the air, and tossed her into the cauldron of boiling tar. In the blink of an eye, her body sizzled to ash. "And now, gentle maiden, the world is ours," said Butcher Boy George. "Come with me, and we shall be man and wife forevermore." The girl wasted no more time, for the brave butcher boy had won her heart. But before they departed, they went to the cellar, where there was enough gold and silver for every village in the land. They gathered as much silver and gold as they could and left the rest that others might have some too. And together they lived happily ever after.